Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. Things might look a little different if you are viewing this on YouTube. That's because I am not ready to unveil the new set for Sex Party just yet. So my assistant behind me is holding up a gray sheet. You can kind of make out a little bit, but come back next week. I think you guys are going to love it. On the show with me this week is Rachel Burch. Rachel is a lawyer. She is the host of an amazing podcast called Love Before 100. She has a bucket list of things that she is doing, that she has to do on the way to finding love. It's amazing. We talk a lot about dating and the dating apps in this episode. We also chat about how traumatizing it can be to be dating in your 40s. It's a lovely episode. I know the person behind me's arms are getting tired. So let's get you over to the interview. Enjoy my conversation with Rachel Burch.
This week's conversation.
Rachel Burch, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you're here. At the start of the episode, obviously, people are like, you know, they've seen the intro, but I never really give too much away in the intro, right? By the time they've seen it, this has already been recorded. So for those people, can we tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Rachel. I was an attorney for 10 years. I then got into life and business coaching for about 8 years. And most recently, I perform stand-up comedy, and I have a podcast called Love Before 100. And it's all about dating in Newport Beach, California, Orange County, in your late 40s.
Okay. See, they're already like, all right, I'm in. They're interested. They're bookmarking it. They're downloading. So, okay, what came first, the stand-up comedy or the podcast?
The stand-up comedy came first.
Okay.
And the podcast is kind of a marriage of the comedy and the personal development. It's a way that I kind of consider it inspirational comedy, in that it's stand-up comedy is amazing because you can make people feel good in the moment, but it doesn't transform their lives. Maybe like sex. I don't know. I mean, there's probably transformative sex. I don't know. Maybe we'll have an episode on that. But to be able to like actually give people principles that can move their life in this like kind of healing direction while they're laughing was my ultimate goal. So the podcast kind of birthed from the whole path that I took.
Yeah. Okay. And so there's numerous jumps in there, right? From attorney to like life coach, right? And then from life coach to comedian, the podcast host. What spurred? Are you just someone who needs constant like evolution? Would you say, or is it like these are things that were thought out before, like when you were young, where you're like, I'm going to be a lawyer and a stand-up comic and a, because at one point in my little fucking 6-year-old brain, I was like an archaeologist, an adventurer, a spy, you know, all the typical.
Yeah. I mean, it's a combo of both. My Instagram profile actually says always evolving because growth mindset just is a core value of mine. I'm like obsessed. So yes, that, but also as a child, I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. Just that was what I was going to be. I had no real concept of what it was because my dad was one and I saw a lot on TV. But once I got there, I realized this isn't what I thought it was. It's not being in the courtroom and like saving, you know, people and solving crimes or whatever I thought it was from TV. So yeah, it took 10 years, but eventually I let myself leave. And I believe my path was, I don't know, predestined seems like such a heavy kind of concept, but more looking back, I can see how everything I went through got me to where I am today. And it just, even having a dating podcast, like that was never on the radar. In fact, I never even talked about dating. And then, you know, just it kind of divinely put itself in my path. So
Well, I kind of want to try to figure out how that happened exactly, right? Because I think there's a lot of important stuff here, and if you look at everything you've done, right, being an attorney, being a coach, being a comedian, being a podcast host, these are not easy things. So you seem to choose difficult or challenging things that require work and effort and consistency. That's just the first couple of like everything that, having things in common, right? These things that you've chosen to do. Do you think that's like on purpose? Is that like you're part of your growth mindset where you're like, I need to pick something that's like hard as shit, or like
No,
to try to like push it to? Okay.
no way. I
Okay.
consider
Yeah.
myself like very lazy, very lazy. Like even when I
Really?
studied for the California bar, I got butcher paper and wrote all the, it's 3 months of studying. That's all you do. And so I got butcher paper, wrote down all the laws that I needed to learn for constitutional law, posted it on the wall, and then just laid on the couch and stared at it until like it went. So I don't consider myself someone that wants to, well, I used to not, until all of a sudden I looked back and went, wow, I've done a lot of hard things. And then I kind of adopted the mantra, I can do hard things. But originally, no, it just was kind of the next step in front of me. Like the law, the reason I left the law was because my son, when he was 18 months, had some developmental delays. And I went part-time to kind of help with him. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and learn about nutrition. What can I learn so I can help with his, process? And I went to this Institute for Integrative Nutrition where they taught you all this other stuff besides nutrition. And so I became a health coach. And my first client, we're talking about kale. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about kale. I want to talk about like her marriage and how she hates, being an engineer and all this kind of stuff. And by our second call, she had quit her job and her life transformed. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to help people transform their lives. Health, yes, very important. That will be a passion, but I want to help them transform their lives so they're just happier people,
Yeah, I mean, and that's like part of like what it takes to transform your life if you're like sick or like you're not feeling 100%, or you want something that's health related, you have to kind of adopt all these other practices to get to it all is related, which is like a theme that's already presenting itself in this episode. So go me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, even dating in your 40s, right? Like that's incredibly difficult too. So here we are in this path of like choosing the more difficult thing, the harder
Yeah.
path, right? And so where did that come into play? Were you someone who was dating in your 40s like, this is fucked up, I want to talk about it? Is there anybody else out there who's, because even in like people who listen and watch this show, a lot of them are in their late 20s, in their 30s, and they're like, this is fucked up, this is crazy out here, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know, whatever. But then you get into your 40s and it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the good news, I guess, for your listeners is that I never dated before, because I met my ex-husband in law school when I was like 21. So, and then we dated and then we got married. So after my divorce, I was like, oh, I get to date for the first time, which, so I'm like a young person in the sense of making all the mistakes of first time daters, getting caught up in like the catfishes and the love bombers and the people that build false intimacy. And you're like, oh, this person really likes me. And then they disappear, the ghosting, like all those things I went through. And I share about it on the podcast because my goal is to make people feel less lonely. I felt so lonely going through it. I mean, you're already without a partner and now you're like, and even talking with other girlfriends, there was something that just, so I felt lonely. And I thought if I can help just one person feel less lonely, it would be worth it. So
Yeah. I mean, and also like when you're lonely, you want to know if other people are going through the same shit or if you're just crazy, because I've been there, right? And I think, as you get older, especially now, like the pandemic stuff and the insanity of like the politics and like just nothing feels quite the same. It's like a different level of loneliness. And I've had to ask myself, wait, is this normal? Is this what my parents went through? Is this what, like, enjoy it while you're young, because when you're older, it's gonna, I was like, is this that, right? Or is this something else? So I think wanting to talk to people about it, have a podcast, a lot of times on this show, I'm asking, just because I'm curious, just because I want to know, hey, is this normal? Hey, is this whatever? And a lot of times it's not. So, but they're used to that. They already know I'm a nutcase. But with you, so when you were married, did you say at 21 or around 20? You met him at 21?
We met like first day of law school at 21. Okay. We got married at 28, but we dated
the
whole time.
Okay. So, and then when did you get divorced?
6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long did you wait to start dating?
Well, so there was COVID in there, which I did date during COVID. That was an interesting kind of thing. But so the first episode of my podcast, I share that I lost like 40 pounds. Through my personal development, learned that we all wear a sign telling the world like how to treat us. And my sign, because I was so self-conscious about myself and my body, was, don't look at me, nothing to see here. So literally I walked around invisible. Men never noticed me, talked to me. My goal was always like, let me get hit on at Starbucks. Like that will be like the ultimate. That will let me know like something's changed. And when I realized I had this sign on, I like kind of emotionally took it off. I started, instead of wearing like baggy Lululemon track pants, I started wearing jean cutoffs, things like that. And in one weekend, it was like all of a sudden the men saw me. And I did kind of this episode about that. And I met this guy on a plane and all these things transpired. But the dating really only started, I would say, the last 18 months, maybe a year.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So the last 18 months, what has it been like? I mean, and feel free to tell the long version, because everybody wants to hear about what that's like, the journey, the adventures, the misadventures. You said that there is catfishing in there. So if you have I am obsessed with catfishing stories.
Okay.
I've had a couple people attempt it on me. They never, because I'm too slick, but I love the TV show and it's an obsession of mine. So like, what has it been like to be single in your 40s, right? And dating?
So yeah, it's been a roller coaster for sure. Luckily, like 6 years ago, I bought the lifetime membership for Bumble. It was like $150 instead of paying $30, every time I got on. And I thought, best case scenario, I meet my person and I wasted $150. Worst case, 6 years later, I'm still going to be popping on every once in a while, which I am. So I finally got back on like 2 days ago, which is kind of the most recent, but going all the way back. So about a year ago, when this whole thing started and men started like actually noticing me and I would interact with them in person, I met this man on a plane. We connected, just talking about Turbulence. He lives in another state. We would chat through Instagram. We went on a couple dates. It was like this kind of like rom-com 3-month, thing. And right after we slept together, he kind of changed. And I had a client at the time that had a similar situation. And I realized through talking to other people that this was like kind of a common phenomenon, right? Like there are men that they will lose interest after that happens the first time. And so I wanted to share about that. I think it's a term, but like the hump and dump, just like kind of, and also for people that, I know, right? People that have been married, the first relationship, no matter how short it is after divorce, is like particularly heartbreaking. So I start this whole dating process, like kind of coming out of heartbreak, which was hard. And then the apps are particularly interesting. I mean, especially here in Newport, I share a lot of stories on the podcast about talking to the guys here, and they'll just say that they're, dating like 8 women at a time, but they don't like any of them. Like, I understand dating a lot of people at the same time because you're trying to figure out what you like and what you want. There's no judgment on that. I do that. But you don't like any of them. You don't want them. So, move along, kind of. I've been on dates with men that this one guy had a picture of him as the front man for a band. And I was like, okay, that looks nice. That picture was at least 15 years old.
Oh.
And I hear mostly from my dates a lot of like the women don't look anything like their pictures. They're, a lot older. Their bodies are different. I went out with someone last night and he was like, oh my God, you look like your pictures. That was the first thing that he said. I'm like, yeah, thank you, I guess, So
yeah, I mean, turbulence, right? It sounds like it right there is like a theme of dating in your 40s, and maybe it's the title of this episode. I don't know. I haven't got there yet, but it is very thematic of everything you just said. So okay, let's go back for a minute. You are your weapon of choice is Bumble.
Yeah.
Do you stick with Bumble, or do you try Hinge, or there's those luxury ones out that are in California based, especially too, I forgot, one's called The Game, or I don't know, whatever, but there's like high end whatever. Or are you sticking with Bumble?
So I've tried Hinge, and no offense, but all I get is 25-year-olds that will message me like, you're my dream cougar. I'm like, I would not know what to do with you if I matched you. I'm sorry.
Well, have you thought about it? Have you tried just going on one day with a 25-year-old?
So I have thought about it, yes, mostly for content. I chatted with one and he just started sending, he asked me do you send nudes? I get a lot of that. Do you send nudes? I'm like, no, I don't send nudes. I'm a former attorney. There's no part of me that wants to put naked pictures, send you naked pictures. And then I asked him, I'm like, do you? And he was like, no, but I send videos. And I was like, is that a thing now? Videos? And he's like, yeah. And he sent me a video and I was like, oh, okay. It is a thing. Which again, there's no judgment. I'm very curious about all the things, cause I'm new to it all. So I'm like, I watched it and I was like, okay, thank you for that. I'm not sure. I never know. It's so awkward. I'm like, how do you reply to that? I just send the flame emoji or something. I have a friend, she just sends the word rar.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, I would entertain it, honestly, if I found the right person, but I think they'd have to either make me laugh or have something intelligent. There has to be more than just I'm physically attracted to you, just for any age.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and in that situation too, right? I feel like if you were to find someone who would sent you a video of him masturbating or whatever he was doing, you're like, wow, that's hot. Okay. But you also read books okay, let's go get coffee, right? Because then you'd have the possibility of this great sexual thing, but you'd have enough intelligence to chat, right?
Right. And that's the thing. I'm open to those experiences, but I'm very particular in what I want it to look like. So I don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned. I have a feeling that especially even if you're just doing it for content, I think what a fucking phenomenal idea. 2 thumbs up from Sex Party. Yeah. Okay. So there's that. So you are using just Bumble, but because Hinge was kind of a disaster.
I've used it a couple times. It's just it's not successful. I've tried. What is it? The League, I think, where they give you 3. That's not. And then Meet Mindful, where you're supposed to have more spiritual connections, but
okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, the league is the one I was referring to. That one is such a I mean, if they want to sponsor the show, I will say nice things and whatever.
right?
But from my personal experience, no, I won't. If it's a terrible app, it's a terrible
Yeah,
app. And then they can't just throw money
exactly.
at me.
Right.
But yeah, the league, that's supposed to be like a more upscale, they're choosing for you kind of sort of dating app. But I just think, and I swear I'm not going to go on a dating app tirade. I'm off the dating apps. I'm grateful to be off the dating apps and in a relationship, so that's wonderful. But you're right. I mean, you said that they are an experience, because they are. I mean, you never know. It is a lot like fishing. It's a lot like fishing in a river that may or may not be polluted depending on the time of day. So that's happening. I mean, how frustrated are you getting with dating apps? And have you tried like going and doing like speed dating or anything like that, like in person, or do you plan to stick to more digital stuff?
So the concept of my podcast is that I have a bucket. I call it Sex and the City meets Jackass, because there's a bucket list of things that I have to do to find my person. And only one of them is dating apps, right? Like perform stand-up comedy. I have on the list, but I haven't done this yet. Like go to a firehouse and ask someone to take me to coffee or go to coffee with me. There's just like a list of things from like boring to daring, right? And so yes, I have tried online speed dating and it was terrible, mostly because the internet connection wasn't good and the people were weird. I'm supposed to go on Thursday to an in-person speed dating event. But I may have a like date, so I might cancel.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, what better reason to cancel speed dating than for a date? That's amazing. Right. I invented the concept of Irish speed dating back when I was in the nightclub world, where every time you sit down, you both take a shot, and it, you go until something happens. So, yeah, it's very messy. Yeah, but like speed dating, I mean, that shit can be really awkward too. I mean, you almost have to choose your level of like pain, right? You have to choose your level of like awkwardness. I mean, you know this stuff, but dating is difficult, and being single is difficult. It's just like you have to kind of figure out like, what am I willing to endure? Because I mean, especially in your 30s and your 40s, for some of those people out there, your late 20s, like, fuck, like you have to endure quite a bit to get to a good. It becomes that thing where it's like, for every shot I take, only whatever percentage is going to go in. And when you were on this in these last 18 months on this journey, like, did you ever, how many times have you been like, fuck it, I'm done with this, I need a break, I don't care, whatever, I'm done, and then you like delete the app? And,
so many times. I mean, at least once a month, probably. But here's the thing: the more you do it, and then they always say this, and it made me so crazy because I'm like, how do I do that? But I've finally gotten there. The less attached you are to the outcome, like if you can just have a good time. Like I really feel like I have no expectations of the speed dating. I feel like it's probably just going to end up being me and a bunch of women, but maybe I'll make a new friend, or I'll find it's at a wine bar. Like maybe I'll find, so one of the things that I've adopted is, what can I learn from this, or what's a takeaway? So even my worst date, this guy was super clingy and weird and couldn't find the place. So he kept calling me, and I'm like, just put it in Maps. Don't you have the Maps app? Anyway, he told me about like my new favorite winery. And so it was kind of like, I endured that, but I got something out of it that, really benefited my life. So like with the speed dating, especially being a comedian, I'll get content out of it. I'll make myself laugh. I'll just kind of be like, I'll get podcast stories out of it. That was really one of the other reasons why I launched the podcast, for a win-win scenario. If you can figure out a way to make dating a win-win scenario, then you just don't lose. A bad date, getting ghosted, whatever, it goes into the podcast. So if you could, I don't know, come up with a bet or have some kind of fund, like every bad date you put $20 in towards a massage or something, you're like, well, at least I'm closer to my massage, or whatever it is. Just make it a win-win experience. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to be deleting the apps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of people, especially on this show, are like writing books about it, writing blogs about it, like podcasting, you're right. And you know, it's very interesting because we haven't talked about dating in quite a bit on the show. When we do come across what you just said, and it's the people who can date for the experience of dating, right? Versus dating to find a partner or a husband or a wife or wives or husbands or a girlfriend, whatever, to date without a goal. And everyone's like, well, that sounds stupid. Da, da, da. Like, but no, I mean, you learn how to cook a pork chop the English style from whomever. You go and, rip shots of whatever aged whiskey in a fucking bowling alley. Like, you find your wineries. So there is that idea of, the good old, my favorite, like, don't try, fuck it, just do it, have the experience, and you'll get everything that you wanted out of it without trying to. And that's, I think, really difficult for people to swallow. And I don't know if it's a culture thing where it's like it's drilled into us, like we date to find, but and I'm sure people will accuse me in my younger years of being a bit of a womanizer, but like, that's the mentality I always had, was to just be really honest and just have. I always wanted to have as many experiences as I could, and of course, a ton of those, if not all of them, were sexual, right? But I'm a big fan of just experiences, and I think that you're totally right when you say just go have a good time. But then people's response to that, and then you can rebuttal this, right, and chime in with your expertise, because I can't wait to see what you say. People will say, well, that just sounds like a waste of time. I've already had all my fun, right? So like, what do you say to someone who's like that?
So, I mean, I was definitely in that camp of not necessarily I had my fun, because I didn't, but more like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm someone that naturally wants a partner, a companion. Like, I'm missing this person in my life. So that's what I want. And, the hardest place for me to get, and that's why it like really chronicled nicely on the podcast. Like, I almost had to go all the way to the opposite side, where I mourned, what if I don't have a partner? What if I never get a partner? Then what? Like, if I had a crystal ball that said, you're never getting a partner, I'd get on with my life, right? So how can I operate in the sense of, I opened up a fortune cookie and it said, you're single forever. And I believed it. And I'd want to have more fun in my life. I'd want to have more adventure. So how can I make this experience? How can I make this experience give me the feelings that I want to have? And so, last night on my date, I just was like, I say in my podcast, when I like somebody, I just turn into like a babbling puddle of goo. Like, I overshare, I talk too much, and that's just who I am. And I know that all the, dating coaches say, like, lean back, don't talk so much, don't respond to their texts, don't do this. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. If that doesn't feel good to me, it feels like a strategy. I get why they say that, but I don't want to do that. And last night, the guy was so excited about how like dorky and, babbly I was, that night he was like, okay, when can I see you again? And that felt so nice to just not do it wrong. That was I think that's the resistance that you probably hear to people saying, like, just have fun. It's not about like, I already did that. It's more like, basically you're telling me that I'm doing it wrong, and I don't want to hear that. And so I had to go through the process of not attaching to people too early, letting them show, like, don't decide this person is for you too early on, because they might be the guy who has a girlfriend that's going to come over in the middle of the night. When I left and was driving home, all I could think was, thank God I wasn't the woman on the other side of the door trying to get an explanation for like what was happening. I'm like, adios. And I got to see that that's who that guy was, because I didn't attach to him too quickly. I just was having fun. So it's not about not getting your goal. It's a way to get your goal. This is how you get your goal. It's be less attached, be more attractive, be more open, be more discerning, and you will get where you want to go that way.
I mean, yeah, phenomenal point, right? Like kind of a mic drop moment there. And I think, everything you said is incredibly crucial. But I think what I heard out of that is something that I hear every now and again, but it seems to me that like in a world where it's like be less available, like you said, don't text back right away, lean back, don't lean in, someone who is truthful and like giggly and like snorting and like laughing and like being themselves and being fun, that is so refreshing for most people, because it's not the like, I'm going to pull back, I may or may not text you. Was that comment about your shoes sarcastic, or did I really mean it? You know, like when someone is just like really being truthful and it comes through, you know, in a world where like lying is cool, like telling the truth is like the most rebellious thing you could do. Right.
Yeah.
And so I love that. We're going to get to your podcast in a second, because you mentioned this bucket list that you have, right? And you said one of the items was go to a firehouse and ask someone to take his coffee. So when you do this, right? When you do this, what are you wearing? That's what everyone's going to ask me to ask you. So I'm asking you now.
So I recently learned that the color red, there's a study on this, the color red, if you wear red, men will find you more attractive. I don't know the whole, like, if you're a man, but like heterosexually, if you're a woman and you wear red, men will find you more attractive. And as an attorney, I'm like, show me, you know, the evidence. So my friend sent me this article and I read it, and it's basically because it sends the signal that you're sexually available, which I thought, you know, it's kind of like waving a red flag at a bull. So I will probably be head to toe dressed in red.
See, that's amazing. And like coming from the nightlife world, we had studies like that too, where I think it was servers, wait staff who wear red make 40% more tips if they're female. And this is one of my favorites because we did this all the time. If you replace the light bulb in the women's bathroom from just a normal light bulb to a red light bulb, the women will stay 80% longer, because they find themselves more attractive.
So I just took a 6-week lap dancing striptease workshop for the second time. So now I have 12 weeks of that practice under my belt, and it's red lights, the whole place. And she has this exercise where you like look in the mirror and, you know, and I was like, I look pretty good in the red light. And I was like, how can I get more of this ambiance in my house? So I could see being anywhere with red lights. I would stay, definitely.
Yeah, it's super horny. It's super like relaxing. Something about it is just sensual and like, you know, it's very like Moulin Rouge-y. So so there's all that. So was the striptease stuff, the lap dance stuff, was that on the bucket list?
It was.
Okay, so what, we can get into that, but I want to know like what other things are on the bucket list, because, and you don't have to give us all of them, right? But like, you know, what are your favorite? I mean, have you done 5 of them? Like, are there 100 of them? Like, break down your bucket list a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot. So here's how the list got started, and then it's gone through a couple iterations, which is interesting, I promise. So when I work with clients and they want like to have a baby, or they want to start a business and their dream's not happening, I try to shift their disappointment and victim mindset to like, okay, why is this a great opportunity? What could you only do if your dream isn't a reality? So for me, when I was enjoying my time with that guy that I met on the plane, I was like, okay, how can I be less like anxious attachment? How can I not be freaked out if I'm not hearing from him or whatever it was? And I was like, I'm going to make a list of all the men I want to go on a date with. So it was like an Irishman, an Australian, a pilot, a B-list celebrity, like, you know, it was just like this list of like 40, a fireman, of course, a policeman, like a bald guy, a guy that's living with his parents, just like all these different ones just to entertain me, right? So I made this list. It was like a scavenger hunt. And so then I get on the apps, and everybody here where I live was not Irish. They weren't a B-list celebrity. There were a lot of firemen. There are a lot of firemen on the apps. And I've now been out with 3 or 4 firemen. So I crossed that one off a couple times.
Well, you got to be careful which firehouse you go to then.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. So I, like a Southern gentleman, but these people are not necessarily here. So then I thought, okay, let's change up the app. Let's change up the list and make it things that I can control. And I can control if I take a lap dance class. I can control if I go speed dating. I can control if I go sit at a hotel bar and have dinner by myself. So go on a solo vacation, go to a country music concert, like all these things. And so that was the second phase of the list. But then I realized, to your point, a couple, I don't know, segments ago, that I was like chasing a guy. Like, where would the guy be? Where would the guy be? So I'm like writing these, the firehouse, right? It's like, I don't want to go to the firehouse. I'm going there because I want to find a guy. And so I realized what I'm looking for in dating is passion, excitement, adventure, and fun. Those are the things I'm looking for. So I revised the list again, and I was like, how can I hack just feeling those things directly? And that was where like the strip tease, like I'm not going to meet a guy in my strip tease class. I mean, there weren't any in the class. It was all women. So, but I wanted to feel passion and I wanted to feel, excitement. So I put these things on the list that would ultimately hack that. I put one night stand on the list. And I have an episode called like basically like a lawyer, a life coach, and a comedian walk into a one night stand because all the voices in my head are like, should we do this? Is this safe? Like, and so there's a lot of processing that goes on for me in dating and being safe physically and all that kind of stuff. So basically, there's probably 100 things on the list. There's a bunch of different iterations. I've been out with, I probably crossed 40 of them off the list now. And then the concept of love before 100 is before I get to 100 points, because I assigned everything a points value, or before I get to 100 years old because I'm older. So it's a little, pun kind of thing.
Well, wait a minute. Have you had a one night stand yet or no?
No, I've had one night, not like sex, but other things. But sure. No, I haven't had that. And honestly, I think I'm more interested in a like purely physical, but like with that component of the guy reads books or whatever.
Sure.
Even if it's like a weekend. I recently interviewed for my podcast a mature OnlyFans creator. And she said that her greatest adventures were her lovers. And she talked about like how I see travel. She was talking about like, even if it's just this amazing, like romantic weekend. So I envision it more like, I had said an X-rated Hallmark movie or some kind of like, I want there to be I'm a romantic, I'm a hopeless romantic. So there has to be a romantic element, even if it's a short duration of time.
Well, okay. What would an X-rated Hallmark movie look like? Would that mean like there's more? Because in Hallmark movies, there is kind of sex. So they don't show anything, but
I don't think
kind of allude to it or something.
So
an X-rated Hallmark movie, like where are the guardrails? So we know what we're dealing with here, because I need to know what an X-rated Hallmark, like what can't we do? We can't say fuck probably, even though it's X-rated, but
right.
Like you're going to show sex, but not really penetration.
Well, so there would be like a meet cute, right? Like these people meet, they probably don't like each other at first, but then there's some conflict. Maybe they're in a baking competition.
Right. He like runs over her snowman or something.
Yeah. And she's mad and she's talking, shit to her friend, but they're attracted to each other. You can see that, they keep looking at each other and that they're going to get together. And then a bunch of stuff happens. And then, there's a lot of sex that's had. But they like each other because they've been through this little kind of mini Hallmark movie. So it's not that I want my little romance to be aired on TV. That's not the Hallmark movie portion of it. It's more just like, I just want to feel like all cozy and cute and also like super X-rated. Is that like a thing? No, but that's my goal.
But you can make, first of all, I think that you are way underselling this, because I think that like there's a lot of women out there that want exactly what you just said. They want the warm and fuzzies, right, from the Hallmark movie, from the snowman competition, and the like swinging from the lights or whatever. The Christmas is almost ruined and we need to save it together, but I hate you, but we should fuck. They want all that. The hot cocoa with the vodka in it, right? But they also want to like be fucked like a porn star. You know what I mean? And
marshmallows shaped like penises.
Exactly. And you can have both. And I think that this is something that you should really follow on this and like figure out a way to package that. Because I feel like there's a lot of women who love that stuff. And like what a great way to like roll into. I mean, look at my podcasting skills right now, right? We're rolling into your podcast. Now you kind of like gave us the shell of what it is and love before 100, right? But what's the longer pitch for your show, right? And what happens when you hit 100 and you roll off into or you snowmobile off into the sunset with your Hallmark lover? Like, does the podcast end?
So I've been getting that question a lot lately.
I bet.
So we're going into season 3, and here's the thing. Originally, so I had a podcast before, and it was all about personal development. And this was just there was just going to be 1 or 2 episodes on dating. But through kind of a series of events, I ended up meeting the former producer for The Bachelor Australia. And he's producing podcasts now. And so I said, let me give you all the ideas of what I want to do for my podcast. And he was like, I really like this bucket list idea. And so together we kind of expanded it into this. And I call it part rom-com, part TED Talk, part reality show, because it kind of is that. It has sound effects and music, and it's a story form. And my ultimate goal is actually to sell it to a streaming service as like a sitcom. It's kind of like my character is like a little bit Meg Ryan, Amy Schumer, right? She's kind of, and then a little bit like I Feel Pretty, in that she's delusional enough that she thinks that, she's a good catch sometimes until she gets on the apps, and then the apps show her that she's not. And so then she gets off. But it's like this kind of, and I'm not trying to be the star of that. Like, people are like, oh, you're going to play yourself? No, that's not my goal. My goal is to be more of like the Candace Bushnell, like of Sex and the City, where she could be sitting next to you at Starbucks and you would have no idea, but like kind of created it. So I'm not trying to act. I just created this. But basically, as I said, if you've ever read The Alchemist, which is, an amazing book that's a story form of transformation, that's what this is through dating. I have a lot of married men that listen to the podcast. I have all ages that listen. Like, you don't have to be single to kind of learn through it. So we're going into season 3, and I think it's going to be this kind of like sexual exploration. And the goal, because I'm kind of manifesting it with the universe, is to have my person at the end of season 3. Because for a good, show, kind of like Ted Lasso, there's 3 seasons. So we're finishing up the third season, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I've done this work. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Now I'm ready for my person. So, if he's on board, then we could, and I would not do something that's subpar. It would have to be like a really funny, really good show. So I could do something with him. I could have guests. The other idea that I had today was, I could just be the wing person, and we could get other people. I have a lifetime subscription on Bumble, so I could just put a bunch of my friends on there and start finding them dates, and we can find bucket list things for them. So the creator in me is going to definitely pivot and create the next iteration of it. But I don't know. It kind of depends on what gets presented. I really feel like it's being divinely kind of inspired and led. And so I don't get to choose, really.
Yeah, you're kind of at the mercy of this thing that you created almost. And maybe it doesn't want to end at season 3. Maybe it wants to drag you along through the snow and then for a couple more seasons. So right now, are you dating someone? Are you dating multiple people? Because, you said earlier, the California dudes are like, I'm dating 8 chicks and they're all boring and blah, 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 blah. So like, are you dating multiple people? Are they boring and blah, 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 blah? Or like, are you dating one person? Do you have your eye on someone?
So,
no pressure.
no, there's no pressure. So I have not had like more than a 3-month relationship in the 6 years I've been divorced. Everyone I meet is like, they like have boyfriend, whatever. They have these. I have not. And my joke was like, I can't even get in a bad relationship. I was kind of trying to figure out like what's going on here. So, as I said, I get off the apps a lot. So on Sunday, 2 days ago, I was like, you know what? I'm re-downloading the app. I know I've been off it for months. I gave up on it. I swore it off, but I have this damn cursed lifetime membership that makes it so appealing. So I get on, I put myself in incognito mode. So only the people that I right swipe on can match me. And I match it 20 people and I'm chatting with a bunch of them. So yesterday, which was the first full day after I got on the app, I had 2 dates. I had a lunch date and a dinner date. And then I invited a guy to meet me and 2 of my single girlfriends for happy hour on Wednesday. The first date yesterday was fine. It was like a 5 or 6 out of 10. He was super nice. Like we know some of the same people. I would go out with him again just because I like to give people a chance to build something.
How did he blow it? You said it was okay. You said it was fine. First, that is not a good review, and that's cool. But like, you have to tell me why it was fine. But then you also said I would go out with him again. So there has to be some redemption.
I'm giving space for the opportunity for passion to grow. I feel like I don't want to use like a derogatory term, but for me, I just don't want to make snap decisions. I had one guy like, I didn't feel a deep connection. I'm like, we just had lunch. What do you want me to rip off your clothes? Like, what kind of deep connection are you expecting over lunch? Plus, of the 2 of us, like I'm the better catch. And I say that with like a lot of humility and personal development work behind me.
Sometimes it's fucking just true,
Yeah. And so, but it was, I'm like, okay. And he did me a favor because I wasn't feeling it, but I was trying to see if anything could grow. So this guy, for me, sense of humor is so important. Not banter. Banter's fun and it gets the dopamine going, but like someone that gets my sense of humor, that like laughs at my jokes, that like, or at least kind of smirks at them. And he was funny, like ish, he wanted to be funny. He's looking at classes to take to be funnier, which is kind of indicative of the funniness level. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, it was just very pleasant is the word that I would use, but he was attractive. But I mean, I could have been meeting with my accountant and discussing, some of my like deductions, and there probably would have been like more
chemistry.
Yeah.
Whenever you use the word accountant, it's a no-go. Like that's like, I actually have a joke with my girlfriend now where it's like, if something happens to me, then you're gonna be stuck with an accountant or whatever, like that. It's kind of a thing.
No disrespect for the accountants.
We love you guys, but like
we need you. The guy that said he didn't feel a spark was an accountant. So
everybody, God. Okay, so will this guy that you went out with, you said it was that was a lunch date?
Yeah.
The non-funny I'm taking classes guy. Yeah. Okay, do you think maybe he was nervous or something, or he just
maybe that's why I'm willing to go on a second date. He did make a couple comments where I was just like, we probably don't align like on our belief system there. So sure. I'm just saying it's hard. It's harsh, especially in this dating climate. Like, why do we have to judge people so quickly? I mean, yes, be discerning if somebody's like a narcissist or has big red flags or whatever, but like leave space for passion to grow. Like, what's the worst? You have coffee or you go on a walk or you have lunch with somebody. So I'm open to a second date, but the dinner date was really good.
Okay, well, before we get to that, right? Because I definitely want to hear about that. The first guy, will he then become like? Are you working on material? Will he become material for your stand-up now?
So the awkward part is that he actually knows people that I know. And he actually texted today and was like, hey, if you want me to come on your podcast, which I actually would be open to, just because I've had a guy that I went out with before on the podcast and it was super fun. But I was like, let me figure out the angle and then I'll because I'm not like trashing anyone on the podcast.
Sure.
So
yeah.
And he knows the name of it and he would listen to it. So I don't want to make anyone feel bad. Most of the time I have so much material that I kind of don't. I mean, he did give me one funny joke actually. So maybe, but he asked for a royalty, which is the accountant in him, I guess. He's not an accountant, but he's like accountant-ish.
Yeah, he has some sort of like accountant blood flowing through those veins. But like when you're up on stage, like, hey, and then this, doing your stand-up routine, right? You won't use a bad date for material.
No. Oh yeah, I definitely use bad dates, and it just didn't lend itself. And it was funny because I could see that he had the pressure of either being a really good date or at least being like a joke in the set. I try not to tell people I'm a comedian, even though men find it attractive, because then they try really hard to like become material. And I'm like, oh, now it's weird. Like, don't you want to have sex with me? You want to be a joke?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Like if you're a stand-up comedian and podcast host, like, don't you have like fucking groupies? Like you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you have a ton of dudes probably that are like eyeballing the shit out of you in the comedy club and like, hey, like trying to like be funny to like get close to you and all that. Is that not happening? What the hell?
There's a little bit of that. I recently created a new like opening where I like say like, oh, here's who's here for date night, who's single, who's looking for a date, who wants to take a comedian home after the show. But then I didn't actually hear the yeses until I rewatched the video, and I would have been like, wait, stand up. Like, who are you?
Yeah. What do you do?
Make yourself known, rush the stage, do something,
Yeah. Put your fucking lighters up, dude.
Yeah.
Anything. No, because I mean, that world is so sexual, or can be so sexual and so fun because that energy is there. People are usually drinking. There's like so much horniness happening. I did stand-up comedy for a while, like bombed a few shows and then nailed a few shows, and that was fun. But like that world is very sexual, and everybody knows that, or they do now, or whatever. But I'm just, I would be surprised if you wouldn't have like a ton of dudes just like, being fucking groupie-esque. And then like, if you want me on your podcast, I'll be on your podcast. So like you have that happening too. Like, are you pulling from any of that for dates at all? Like from the comedy world or like, podcast groupies?
No, but you're giving me some ideas. I
mean, let's fucking turn this up.
Up on the list. That's the thing. It's been an interesting group of people, but I took classes at Groundlings in LA, which is like the jumping off point to Saturday Night Live, because for a while that was my goal. And there's this like 25-year-old kid that like started messaging me on Instagram and sends cougar stuff to me all the time and things like that. But I'm just like, oh God, you have such a baby face. Like I can't do it.
I say you do it. I say you do it. I mean, you only live once. You have a list. If not now, when, right? Come on.
I know.
I mean, and what a great episode of your show that would be. Then you have to come back here and talk to me about what happened. I have a feeling, my intuition is telling me you're gonna go for it. Maybe that's the guy,
Well, let me tell you this. This weekend, I went to the Ritz-Carlton in Dana Point to meet a friend. She's staying there. She was at a lawyer's convention. And I'm looking, and everyone in the bar is a lawyer, but like antitrust law. So that's like the accountant level of the lawyers, okay? Sorry to any antitrust attorneys that are listening to your podcast. So there's nobody, but there's this one guy. He looks like he's probably 35. He's wearing board shorts and flip-flops, and he's sitting at the bar, and I'm like, he might be interesting. We leave for dinner. We come back. He's still there, but now he's sitting next to this lady, and he's chatting her up, but he's been drinking the whole time. This lady is 85 years old. like at least 85. I know, right? So we're like, okay, I'm like, what a nice man. He's just chatting up this lonely lady. No, he leans in and makes out with her, like plants a big one on her. He leaves, and I'm like, I can't believe I was going to talk to that man. I notice he's wearing a wedding ring. So some lady out there is married to the guy that's making out with the 85-year-old in the bar, not knowing it. And she gets so excited. You can see how giddy she is. I'm like, at any age, women like enjoy, making out with a random stranger. Then they pull her wheelchair up and like wheel her out. And I'm like, and the security comes in and I'm like, that's going to be me. That's why I cannot like hook up with a 25-year-old, even though the age difference isn't 50 years, it's less. But I'm like, I just have that image in my head and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Now I have that image in my head.
Yeah, it's totally different though. I think I think you should go for it. Rachel Burch, thank you so much for being with me on Sex Party this week. Let's tell them where they can find you, where they can find the podcast, where they can, listen to what's coming up next, where they can see you live.
Sure. So the podcast is called Love Before 100. It's everywhere. It's even on YouTube. And my Instagram is the best place. I post my shows and post all my stuff, and it's the Rachel Burch.
Amazing. Well, I am going to need you to come back to the show in a couple of months to like check in, see where we're at. I mean, I feel like potentially the list, I did give you some more items to add to it. So, or if it's ending, what comes after. But yeah, we need to check back in. So I'd love to have you back, but thank you so much for being here with me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Huge thank you to my guest, Rachel Burch, for being on the show, sharing all of what she's doing. Make sure you go check it out. Love Before 100. Who knows? Is she going to stop the podcast? Is it going to come to an abrupt end? Is there a cliffhanger? Is there some sort of twist? We don't know. Go check it out. If you want to keep putting up with all my nonsense, if you are excited, if you love Sex Party, you want to show that love, that desire, that appreciation, and you're listening on platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, what can you do? You could leave a rating, you could leave a review, you could subscribe. Subscribing is the most important thing that you can do, and I appreciate it greatly. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, I love you. I see you. I appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. Most important, we already covered that. You can leave comments on everything. You can like the video. Come back next week for the brand new studio reveal. I'm always available in the DMs on Instagram, and I'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Sex Party FM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.